On June 16, 2012, Dril tweeted, "This whole thing smacks of gender. I holler as I overturn my uncle's barbecue grill and turn the 4th of July into the 4th of shit." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I know what you're thinking, Jake, why did you not save this one for the 4th of July? And I was planning on doing that, but I can't, because right now in this moment, too much is smacking of gender. I just can't wait another week to do this tweet. Everything around us is smacking of gender. And I would say that things are smacking of gender not necessarily even in the way that the original tweet means. Because what the original tweet is making fun of is the type of person who's like, there's gender issues going on, I'm not gonna take it. It was obviously prescient for 2012 because this type of person, who now we'd probably call an incel, is more common now. But he's clearly parodying the type of person who would make a big stink about like a video game character not being hot enough, complaining that their favorite movie got interrupted by thoughts of gender. And so he's making fun of this guy by imagining that this guy is overturning an uncle's barbecue grill to ruin the 4th of July. Because that's how mad he is when something smacks of gender to him. Ironically, I feel like the way that the phrase is used now, smacks of gender, which is original to Dril as far as I can tell, is in people pointing out that some political ideologies that don't seem to necessarily have anything to do with gender actually have a lot to do with gender. Specifically the way I've seen it this week, and I know that this is going to sound far-fetched if you don't spend any time thinking about this sort of thing, is the whole tariffs and manufacturing thing really smacks of gender. And I've seen a lot of people make this joke. Some recreated the tweet directly, like Starshine on Blue Sky says, "This whole thing smacks of gender. I holler as I overturn the global economy and turn the Dow Jones Industrial Average into the industrial shit." Or on Twitter, Tactical Nuclear Patrick says, "This whole thing smacks of gender. I say before I upend the world economy and turn the 21st century into the century of shit." But it's also used just as a phrase by political analyst accounts. Like when neocentrists asked, "I will never understand the fetishization of being a manufacturing superpower. Like really? You want people to work in factories instead of knowledge jobs? You want people to be less educated, work more hours, and earn less? That's your political philosophy?" This, of course, was in response to a JD Vance tweet. And Rivertam quotes this and responds with what I think is the correct response, not to be reductive, but it smacks of gender. When Jane Hostin made the observation that there is clearly a large contingent of men online that think that if we bring the economy back to be a manufacturing economy, all the men will work at factories and women will be forced to be at home all the time so they can be submissive sexual partners. And Sky Marchini quoted that and bemoaned, I think also correctly, "The everything smacks of gender thesis of politics continues to gain traction in my mind. This is terrifying." I know you think that I'm being hyperbolic. I know that this is me just making a political point, yada yada yada, through a Dril tweet. But literally, as I was getting ready to record this episode, there was a Fox News Chiron where Jesse Waters apparently asked, "Trump tariffs will make you a man?" And many people on Twitter and Blue Sky, like Lee here on Blue Sky, say, "This whole thing smacks of gender." Honestly, after seeing that screenshot, it feels almost inappropriate to say that it smacks of gender. It smacks you in the face with gender. And I really love that, kind of accidentally, Dril from 2012 gave us a great phrase to describe what's going on. Because I think in this day and age, if you're someone who's really online, who reads the worst of the worst people online talking about these issues, you can sometimes feel crazy when trying to explain to the normies in your life what's actually going on. Like when I tried to explain to my roommates that the tariff stuff and the manufacturing stuff actually was about gender, I felt like I was crazy. But I think being able to just say it smacks of gender is a lot less crazy sounding. I mean, it's only less crazy sounding if people know the reference, but whatever. But you don't want to sound conspiratorial, you don't want to say like, there's actually a secret backdoor gender thing going on. And you don't want to use highfalutin terms like gender ideology. So I think a great way to say, hey, there's clearly weird gender stuff going on here that's being unaddressed, is to say, this whole thing smacks of gender. Once again, I understand how ironic it is that I think that that's a very good term to use in this day and age, given that the character who says it in the Dril tweet is definitely not the good guy in the tweet. The person who says it smacks of gender is the person being mocked. And I would argue until like a month ago, I would never use the phrase smacks of gender in a way other than mocking. But seriously, I keep looking around me and seeing more and more things smack of gender. Of course, like I was saying, this phrase was originally used to be mocked. Like I think in 2023 when Max Newland quoted the tweet and said, "If you had told me in 2012 that in 10 years this would pretty much be the exact level of mainstream political discourse in the USA, I'm not sure I would have believed you." And I think the observation he's making there is right, because at that time, there were a lot of people outwardly saying, "Hey, this smacks of gender and it's bad." I mean, I think that all had been bubbling up since Gamergate, but it really definitely did take center stage in the early 2020s. That same month, Jeremy Kaplowitz quoted the tweet and said, "Ben Shapiro at Barbie," because that really was Ben Shapiro and other conservatives' review and complaint about Barbie. Oh, it smacks of gender. Now, of course, why wouldn't a movie about a doll very coded for girls that has a lot to do with girls' place in American society, why would that movie not smack of gender? I don't know, I'm not an idiot. But that definitely was like a critique that people would say, like, this smacks of gender. As if commenting on gender, one of the most fundamental parts of the society we live in, is a bad thing. But once again, I'm not an idiot, so I really can't engage with these things. And it definitely felt like politicians have purposely tried to stoke gender issues. This goes for across the pond as well, where Abigail Thorne tweeted about the general election in 2020 in the UK, quoting the Dril tweet saying it smacks of gender. Because yeah, I'm not an expert in British politics, but it feels like there's a lot of smacking of gender going on, and once again, I think smacking might be a little too tame of a phrase. Of course, not all references to this are big highfalutin political things that I get mad about. For one, in 2022, Ugarlis talked about how he wanted to recreate the tweet. He said, "This was the year. This was the year I was was finally going to do a dramatic reenactment of this. 2 weeks ago, my wife threw away our busted old Weber. On multiple occasions where gender reveal parties cause disasters, people like Etten64 quoted them and said, "This whole thing smacks of gender, I holler." And it's definitely used in silly ways. When Nina Richards updated their synth cord plugs to ones with the transgender colors, Zoe Blade said, "This whole synth smacks of gender." And obviously all these words can be replaced for parody reasons or to apply to other situations. When there was a discourse about whether a Korean market carrying some Japanese items was catering to white people, Who Shot JGR said, "This whole thing smacks of whiteness, I holler as I overturn the shelves at H Mart and turn the 15th of August into the 15th of..." When Depths of Wikipedia pointed out that the Ship of Theseus article has been edited so many times that it actually contains none of the original content, Ed Zitron said, "This whole thing smacks of Hobbes, I holler, overturning the Wikipedia page and turning the Ship of Theseus into the of Theseus." And on the Ides of March in 2023, Moose says, "This whole thing smacks of Caesar, I holler as I overturn the Roman Senate and turn the Ides of March into the Ides of..." And the thing I enjoyed most learning is that there actually is a 2021 scientific research article called "This Whole Thing Smacks of Gender: Algorithmic Exclusion and Bioimpedance-Based Body Composition Analysis" by Kendra Albert and Maggie Delano. Basically, it's about the ways that scales and apps and other things that are meant to judge someone's weight and weight loss are calibrated to very specific gender types, and people who are either transgender or non-binary, it doesn't work as well for them. And I appreciate that even though they were doing something serious, they still had to give it up for Dril. I don't know, I don't want to say that I want things to stop smacking of gender, because I do think that gender is an important thing to talk about. It's an important thing to discuss. We should have conversations that smack of gender. But I guess in actuality, I don't want things to smack of gender at all. I want things to be about gender or not about gender. There's no reason when I'm thinking about the American economy and I have to wonder whether or not I'm going to have to leave my office job to start making shoes for Nike. You have to be like, yeah, but there are a lot of young men that feel insecure about their gender and want women to be home, so I have to do this. It feels like we are currently being controlled by the type of guy who would ruin the 4th of July just because of something being about gender or something involving gender not going the way they want. And I really don't love that they're determined to turn the United States of America into the United States of shit. Follow for a new tweet every day, and if you like the show, consider subscribing to my Patreon, patreon.com/Museum of Twitter. We get the weekly Museum of Not Twitter, and you can vote on what I cover on Subscriber Sundays.